So now that we have covered the 10 commandments of cloud computing, let's move on to the cloud shared resource model, or the CSRM, a critical aspect of cloud computing. We're going to be discussing the history, if you will, of CSRM in the context of multiple shared network infrastructure. And then we're going to go deep dive as to what makes up a CSRM, the key features that comes with it in terms of being multi-tenant and being scalable and able to optimize a lot of resources, and of course the corresponding advantages that comes with those features, if you will, like for instance cost savings, flexibility and efficient resource usage. And on the flip side, we're going to be talking about the challenges, right? The potential security risk, the resource contention, the performance isolation that it brings forward with regards to this kind of environment, and of course the ethical consideration in CSRM, like for instance data privacy or fairness in resource allocation or isolation between clients. And then we're going to be moving on to the discussing a particular company under case study number 7 here, which we will be doing next week in class. And then we're going to finish off with discussing your assignment for this week under assignment overview. Let's quickly go over the cloud shared resource model and why it is essential in cloud computing. So let's define CSRM, right? So CSRM, at the very core, is how computing resources are shared among multiple users and different organizations in the cloud, right? Whenever we talk about resources, we're talking about like storage in the context of hard drives, in the context of memory, the processing power with regards to CPU and the multi-core it has, the GPU, the NPU, and of course the network bandwidth, right? And how all of these resources are shared across multiple users or organization. Now, this particular kind of setup offers a lot of unique benefits, if you will. First of which would be efficiency, right? Because it's able to optimize resource usage, and that means it ensures that essentially nothing goes to waste, if you will. Cost effectiveness is also one of the key benefits of this kind of setup because users share infrastructure costs, thereby making it cheaper for everyone to actually purchase that particular service from the different cloud providers. And it's scalable, right? Resources can be scaled up or down depending on the demand. And of course, you've got resource management where resources are allocated dynamically, meaning you're always getting what you need, right? And there are three different types of CSRM. We've got the public cloud, where basically resources are shared over the internet over multiple users. It is scalable but requires strong security. And there's also private cloud, where resources are basically dedicated to just one organization, of course, offering more control and security, but definitely much more expensive. And you've got the mix of the two, right? Hybrid cloud combines public and private clouds, allowing data and applications to move between them freely for flexibility purposes. Whenever we talk about CSR, and there is that ethical point of view that needs to be baked in this conversation and in the selection of this particular cloud model. Since resources are shared, we need to ensure that there is fair access, right, among different tenants within that model. There's data isolation, if you will, so that the other tenant would not bleed into other tenants' data, thereby exposing some data privacy issues. And there should be transparency, in other words, on how resources are allocated between or among multiple tenants by these cloud providers. So I guess the takeaway from this slide is that CSRM enables cloud computing to be efficient, flexible, and of course affordable, but it also requires a lot of strong ethical practices in order to ensure fairness and security among different tenants. We did mention that CSRM is the practice of sharing computing resources, right? Those computing resources could be, like I said, storage, processing power, networking, infrastructure, right? And this gets buttered out to different multiple users or organizations, right? And what this model allows you to do is that it provides, um, you know, the actual provider to be able to pull and allocate resources dynamically based on the demand of the client, thereby ensuring efficiency, cost savings, and scalability. So what I have here are three different examples of CSRM providers. I think the first one is very popular, which is the AWS or the Amazon Web Services. Basically, it uses the CSRM model, if you will, in order to provide scalable computing resources. So one example of their service that shows CSRM is their EC2, right? If you're not familiar with the EC2 service of AWS, that's basically their virtual machine service, right? So if you want to purchase or you want to provision virtual machine in AWS, you need to purchase the EC2 service. Now, with service like this EC2, it allows different organizations and businesses to share the underlying hardware, if you will, while still maintaining isolations and security through virtualization. Another particular company that's in this sport is Microsoft's Azure, right? So Azure also basically offers shared infrastructure in order to deliver cloud services efficiently, right? GCP is another example, or the Google Cloud Platform. And the beauty of GCP is that they were the pioneer in terms of what is known as auto scaling and its ability to efficiently allocate resources as user demand, goes up and down, while the actual um, system or application or virtual machine is turned on or online, right? So there are other kind of models or vendors in this space. We have Rackspace. We also have IBM Cloud. We also have Oracle Cloud, if you will, right? So all of these major cloud providers rely on this CSRM, if you will, in order to deliver their cost-effective, scalable, and reliable services, making it the foremost foundational model, if you will, in modern cloud computing. Let's now talk about one of the key features of the cloud shared resource model, which is resource pooling, right? So by definition, let me just my pointer here. Okay. So by definition, resource pooling refers to the process where resources like computing power, storage, and network bandwidth are basically pulled together, right, to serve multiple users using a multi-tenant model. So essentially, it allows the cloud provider to dynamically allocate resources to customers from a shared pool based on the demand. So the benefit of that, if you will, is, or the main benefit, if you will, of resource pooling is that it increases resource utilization efficiency. So what that means is that by dynamically allocating resources as needed, cloud providers can ensure that no resources are sitting idle. Of course, this leads to better performance and lower costs for both the provider and the user. So for example, let's consider a particular cloud storage, if you will, right? Like AWS. AWS will allocate storage space to customers from a common pool. As one customer's demand for storage increases, they can access more space from that pool. When the demand decreases, the unused space is made available to others, right? So this particular model or setup, if you will, ensures flexibility and cost effectiveness, and that makes resource pooling uh, enables the cloud provider to operate efficiently while maintaining scalability. Moving on to another key feature of the CSRM is multi-tenancy, right? So by definition, whenever we talk about multi-tenancy, it refers to the multiple users or organizations known as tenants sharing the same physical infrastructure, like servers or storage, while maintaining a logical isolation among other tenants. All right, so this means that although they are using the same physical resource, if you will, their data and operations are kept separate. So the benefit of this is that it provides basically a lot of cost savings and resource efficiency. As users, of course, share the hardware costs, right? So at the same time, it also ensures data isolation and security, um, because tenants don't are not allowed to access each other's data, if you will. So, for example, in a cloud environment, right, multiple customers or multiple tenants may be using the same physical server, but they are kept in isolated virtual environment. And because they are isolated, the provider ensures privacy and security for each tenant, right? So I guess the takeaway from this slide is that multi-tenancy is perhaps, the backbone of a cost-effective cloud service that offers both security and resource efficiency. Scalability is the ability to increase or decrease resource capacity, if you will, based on demand. So this ensures that cloud systems can adapt in real time to the changing workloads and not after a client requests for it, right? So the main benefit of scalability is that it allows applications to handle varying loads efficiently without any performance degradation. So this means that during peak times, like a major sale event, for instance, your cloud infrastructure can automatically scale up to meet those demands. So for instance, during a high web traffic, right, more virtual machines will be provisions or basically automatically added to handle the workload. When the traffic decreases, those resources, those virtual machines, if you will, are deallocated, ensuring cost effectiveness. So scalability for me is basically the key to maintaining performance and optimizing costs in a cloud environment, especially when demand fluctuates. So let's now look at elasticity, another key feature of the cloud shared resource model or CSRM. So by definition, elasticity refers to the system's ability to automatically adjust resources to match the current workload, scaling up when demand is high and scaling down when demand decreases. So the benefit or the primary benefit, if you will, is that it maximizes efficiency by providing resources only when it is needed, which helps, of course, reduce operational costs, which is really the main bottom line. Of course, this ensures that you're never over provisioning resources and wasting money, thereby avoiding to go over budget, right? So, for instance, during in periods of low traffic, the number of active servers can be scaled down, right? Saving both energy and cost, if you will. So as traffic picks up again, more resources are added dynamically to meet the demand. So with elasticity, it ensures that you're always operating at peak efficiency, making cloud services more cost effective and responsive to the fluctuating needs. Let's discuss the pay per use model in the CSRM. So by definition, pay per use is a billing method where customers are charged based on their actual resource consumption rather than a flat rate. You only pay for the resources you use and nothing more. So the benefit of that, which is quite transparent, is that the cost savings, if you will, for users is very pronounced because the charges are directly aligned with the usage, right? So it prevents overpaying for unused resources, making it more cost effective, if you will. So if a customer, for instance, is using a cloud service, it ensures that he only pays for the computing power he consumes per hour or the amount of data that he store each month, right? So this pay per use model of the CSRM is perhaps the fundamental reason why cloud services are flexible and affordable, especially for businesses with varying resource needs. Now let's cover automation and orchestration in the CSRM. By definition, automation and orchestration refers to the use of automated tools, and not just tools, but also processes in order to manage resource allocation and scaling. This means that tasks that would normally require manual intervention are handled automatically by the system. So, obviously, the key benefit is that it reduces manual work, and if it has less manual work, it increases efficiency and speeds up the response time to changing workloads, right? So this ensures that resources are deployed quickly when needed without requiring constant human oversight. So an example would be an automated script, right, that deploy additional computing resources when monitoring tools detect increased demand, for instance. So as traffic spikes up, new resources are added seamlessly, and that is executed via script, not by a human intervention. So automation allows cloud systems to be more responsive, more efficient, more scalable, and of course, making it essential for handling dynamically changing workloads. So the next key feature of CSRM is resiliency and redundancy. By definition, resiliency and redundancy involve designing systems with backups and failover mechanisms in order to ensure continuous availability of services even in the event of failures, right? So again, for obvious reason, the main benefit is that it will minimize the downtime and ensures high availability of services, which is of course crucial for businesses that rely on uptime to serve customers. So for example, a common practice is what we call data replication, across different multiple geographical regions, if you will, or locations. So if one data center fails, the system automatically switches to another data center in a different geographical location, thereby ensuring uninterrupted service. So with resiliency and redundancy, we know that the CSRM is able to maintain the reliability of its cloud environment, and so that they'll be able to help companies avoid costly service disruption. So let's now zero in on the advantages of CSRM, which I think by now is quite evident, if you will. So number one is cost efficiency, right? By definition, CSRM, of course, reduces capital expenditure by, of course, allowing organizations to share cloud resources. This eliminates, of course, the need for expensive dedicated infrastructure for each and every organization. The second one is resource optimization, where the CSRM improves utilization by making sure that computing resources are efficiently used, right? So unused resources are then reallocated dynamically to other clients that requires additional service. So flexibility, you know, CSRM basically enables easy adaptation, if you will, to the changing business needs, right? Resources can scale up or down depending on the demand. Of course, this means agility as well for the company that in this particular platform, and all of that is through CSRM. Maintenance, right? With centralized management, the tasks like updates and security patches are therefore simplified, therefore reducing operational overhead. And lastly, sustainability, right? By optimizing resource use, CSRM, of course, helps reduce the environmental impact, making cloud operations greener and more energy efficient. So, in other words, CSRM would be, should I say, the holy grail of the justification to host your services in your application and your data in the cloud, right? Because it offers significant cost savings, flexibility, and environmental benefits while simplifying management of cloud resources. For every benefits, there's always challenges, if you will. Just trying to um, show you both sides of the equation here. So the first particular challenge to CSRM is security. Right off the bat, it's going to be security concern because in a multi-tenant environment, there are risks of unauthorized access or data breaches between tenants. So proper isolation is critical to mitigate this. It's one of the main questions that is being asked by an auditor auditing a particular cloud provider all the time. Then you have resource contention, right? So when multiple users share the same infrastructure, there can be conflicts over resource allocation, leading, of course, to potential delays or reduced performance. Performance variability is another particular challenge where performance can fluctuate based on demand, especially when many users are accessing resources simultaneously. And one example of this basically is your Wi-Fi, right? The internet service provider will sometimes guarantee you of 1 gigabit per second service in terms of your home internet, but really it comes with a caveat that, well, it really depends on the demand within that particular postal code, if you will, or that region of the city. If there's high demand, definitely your response time is going to drop considerably. So there's that challenge also that comes with that. You cannot really guarantee that the performance will always remain the same. However, you can still force the provider to provide you that minimum level of performance, but of course, oftentimes that will come with a price, right? Of course, you've got compliance issue, right? Adhering to regulations like GDPR can be very, very challenging in a shared environment where data sovereignty and privacy must be maintained. In certain situations, a lot of external auditors will argue that if you're trying to be compliant with GDPR, then the segmentation of data must not just be logical, which is what it is in a CSRM, but they want the segmentation to be physically segmented. In other words, they're pushing for a private cloud rather than a public cloud, if you will, right? So these challenges, if you will, these five challenges highlight the need for a strong management and security measures in a cloud environment, and something for you to consider when you are outsourcing or move or migrating all of your services from on-prem to cloud. There's your ethical consideration for CSRM. Number one, top the list is of course data privacy, right? Ensuring that tenant data remains private and secure in a shared environment is utmost important and critical. So that includes probably putting in place and ensuring that there's a strong encryption and access control that are in place with that provider, uh, that of course is needed to protect those sensitive information of your data, right? Then there's what you call fair resource allocation, right? Um, it's important to equitably distribute resources among users, right? So avoiding scenarios where one user monopolizes shared resources at the expense of others simply because they are a bigger company. And then there's what you call transparency, if you will. There's the clear communication about how resources are used and billed. That is really essential and important in building the trust between the cloud provider and its tenant. And accountability. Accountability defining, of course, the roles and responsibilities in case of security breaches or failure, that sometimes happen, and so that the users and the providers will know who is responsible for what and who's supposed to do what, right, for protecting the data. And of course, last but not the least, consent, right? So obtaining explicit consent, not just verbal consent, but explicit consent from users regarding how their data is used, how is it going to be shared in the cloud, is crucial for ethical operation. And again, this ties up to the legality of the compliance and regulation. And again, all of this ethical consideration must be addressed, right? Because these are valid concerns in order to help build the cloud environment that is secure, fair, and transparent for all users. So for this slide, you have here a seatwork case study. This is something that we're going to discuss next week in class. So I guess the takeaway here is for you to just immerse yourself to what will be required for that group work, if you will, in class next week. And last but not the least, there's an assignment that you need to deliver before the next meeting, I think, or within Monday next week. And this is going to be on a group basis. I would like you to go to your DC Connect, the core shell, our LMS, and look at the assignment column, and you would see there the instruction on what you need to submit with regards to the CSRM topic. I hope this has been informative for you, and I would like to thank you for viewing.